as a designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise. And I am grateful to my colleague for yielding the floor. But I'm very grateful for the opportunity to stand here in the Congress of the United States of America. It means something to me every time I have this opportunity to speak. I love my country. I love what it stands for. Yes, it is not perfect. Yes, my ancestors were treated in a horrific way. But still, we have some ideals that can help us to make a difference. I believe in liberty and justice for all. I believe in the words of the Declaration of Independence. All persons created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I believe that notwithstanding our imperfections, we still have an opportunity to have that more perfect union. So I rise today, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in the name of mercy. In the name of mercy. Justice, yes, always justice, but also mercy. Because justice has to do with the law and fairness, but mercy has to do with compassion and grace. And still I rise, and still I rise. A proud son of the segregated South. I know what it's like to be discriminated against. I know what it's like to drink from colored water fountains. I know what it's like to sit in the back of the bus because you're required to. I know what it's like to sit in the balcony of the movie because you're required to. I know what segregation is all about, and I know what apartheid's all about. And for those of us who lived segregation, the difference between apartheid and segregation is just a spelling of the words. I understand it. So a lot of what I say here on the floor has much to do with the history that I have lived. I care about those who are downtrodden, perhaps because I have walked in their shoes. I care about those who are being denied their human rights, their rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because for many years, I lived in the segregated South where those rights were not afforded me. The rights that the Constitution of the United States of America codified for me, my friends and neighbors, took them away. So I wanted you to, Mr. Speaker, to know just a little bit more about me, because today I rise with an appeal for innocent victims. Just before coming to the floor, I saw a preview, if you will, a showing of what happened in Israel on October the 7th. Mr. Speaker, there is no way to justify that level of inhumanity to human beings. It cannot be justified. We can never tolerate that level of inhumanity. We have to speak up. We have to say something, and we have to do something. I understand. And for those who didn't see what I saw, let me share just a few aspects of what I saw with you. I saw people who would shoot human beings and then decide to decapitate them. I saw an actual decapitation take place. I saw persons being pulled along and brutalized. I would not have you see it, but I would have you know that it happened as I saw it. This is human beings demonstrating an inhumanity to other humans. So I just left this showing. And I'm here today to appeal to this Congress and all who can view what I'm saying for mercy. Mercy and prayers, if you will, and aid, if you will, to the Israelis. But I also am here to ask for mercy and aid for the Palestinians. Our signature has been placed on by virtue of our largesse to Israel. Our signature was on those bombs. I believe that we have a duty, a responsibility, and an obligation to do something about the conditions that were created when those bombs were dropped in Gaza. According to the statistical information that has been afforded me by my capable, competent, and qualified staff, the death toll has risen to more than 27,000 in Gaza. And here is the statistic that ought to touch your heart. I don't care where you're from. It ought to touch your heart to hear this statistic. 10,000 of them were children. You can blame adults, but you can't blame those children. 10,000 babies. Those babies are innocent victims. Those persons in Israel on October 7th were innocent victims. There are innocent victims in Gaza who are women and men. We ought to care about innocent victims, regardless as to where they're from. 10,000 children lost their lives. Reports show that more than 67,000 individuals have been injured. More than 67,000. Those 67,000 people are going to hopefully have a life, but I don't want them to have a life wherein their future, as they see it, has vengeance and revenge. The parents of those 10,000 children, I don't want them to see only vengeance and revenge in their future. Vengeance and revenge doesn't end in one cycle. It's a continuous cycle that you're into. At some point, we have to get out of the killing. I'm asking for mercy. I understand justice, but I know this: an injustice in the name of justice is still an injustice. We cannot, as the United States of America, the country that believes in liberty and justice for all, we cannot sit and watch what's happening in Gaza and not have some sense of a desire to help them. According to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, over 300,000 people are at risk of famine. 300,000 people at risk of famine. 300,000 people hungry. 300,000 people cramped into a very small space. I've been to Gaza. the most densely populated area in the world, and that was when all of Gaza was available to the Palestinians who lived there. Now that you have them confined in just a smaller area, a much smaller area, imagine what it is like for 300,000 people to be at risk of famine. A quarter of Gaza's population, and that's around 500,000 people, are believed to be at phase 5, the catastrophic level, the level where you have a risk for mass starvation and death. I don't wish this kind of thing to happen to anyone. We are a country known for our mercy in war. In this country, if we are at war with you, engaged in mortal combat, if we should injure you in mortal combat, we give you aid and comfort. In this country, we understand that there is a difference between war and a person who is wounded. Yes, you can be at war, but the wounded ought to be treated. And by the way, those persons who on October 7th took the lives of those innocent persons in Israel, they were not giving aid and comfort. But we have an opportunity to do something about this. We cannot allow Gaza to go on suffering with famine in this catastrophic way. We're the United States of America. When we show up, we bring liberty and justice with us. We bring mercy with us. We're not like the other guys. We're different. It's time for us to show up. It's time for us to make it clear that we plan to be of assistance to the Palestinians. We've already made it clear that we're going to be of assistance to Israel. Now we have to make it clear that we're going to be of assistance to Palestinians, the innocent victims. Mr. Netanyahu himself has said that the Palestinians are victims. It's Hamas. It's Hamas that has created the catastrophe. So we must show up, and we have a duty because our fingerprints are on those bombs, those munitions. We are the United States of America. We have to act like it. As of the end of November, more than 1,000 children have undergone one or double leg amputations. This is according to UNICEF. We don't want those 1,000 children to grow up with revenge as the hallmark of their history. We're the United States of America. When we show up, things change. Analysis of satellite photos suggests that between 50 to 61% of all structures in Gaza, this is the Gaza Strip, have been damaged as of January 29th. 50 to 61%. 50 to 61% includes, but not limited to, schools, includes homes, includes hospitals, includes the things that make life livable. 50 to 61%. In rebuilding Gaza, it's estimated, and estimates vary, but it's estimated that the economic cost to rebuild it after this war, depending on who's making the estimate and when the estimate was released, according to estimates, one in January, Reuters article, A Palestinian official has indicated that it could be $15 billion. And this is needed to rebuild Gaza's housing units, $15 billion. Now, we can't talk about sending millions to Gaza when we're sending scores of millions to other places. Our fingerprints were on those bombs. So we're going to have to do more than send a few $100 million. I know that I will have people who will say, well, we can't afford it. We can't afford not to do it because there's a future that we all have to encounter. And that future ought not have in it another cycle of revenge. Our fingerprints were on those bombs that fell in Gaza. The official estimates that 350,000 housing units have been damaged, and 150,000 of them would need to be rebuilt at a cost of about $100,000 per unit. These people are without homes. Many of them were living in circumstances less than desirable before this war, and they're even less desirable now. And according to a December analysis by DW News, a German-based state-owned news station, rebuilding Gaza after the war would cost up to $50 billion. I'm not suggesting that we send $50 billion, but I am suggesting this, that any bill that we pass have money in it for Gaza, and I would hope that we would have the courage to have a line item for Gaza, just as we will have a line item for Ukraine, a line item for Israel, a line item for Taiwan and the Pacific Rim. We ought to have a line item for Gaza. Our fingerprints are on the bombs that fell on Gaza. I have said I'm interested in justice always, but today the appeal is for mercy. As I indicated, justice has to do with the law and fairness. But today I'm asking for mercy for these babies in Gaza that are now fatherless and motherless, for these parents in Gaza who have lost their children. I want to show you just a few pictures to help you better understand what we're dealing with. This first picture that I will show you, is just to give you what an indication or some depiction of what you've already seen. I'm sure you have if you've been attuned to the news. This is much of what these statistical pieces of information reveal. You can see the destruction. This is not habitable, uninhabitable. Our fingerprints on this. Those bombs have our fingerprints, had our fingerprints. We got to do something about this. Here is a picture of a person, an adult, with children. 2 adults, 2 children. I don't know whether that's their home in the background, but I know that those conditions are not suitable for human habitation. and you look at these beautiful babies. Babies are innocent victims of this war. We've got to do something about this. Our fingerprints are on the bombs. Here is a depiction of a child, young person. By the way, I did not bring some of the photos that would give you a more horrific representation. But now as you look at this, I want you to see the Israeli baby. See the Israeli children in this child. There were some Israeli children who were harmed to a greater extent than you see here, and there are some children in Gaza who are harmed to a greater extent than you see here. But as we look at this child, don't look for someone that looks like you. Look at a human being. And our fingerprints are on the bombs that created these conditions. The people in Gaza have been forced to relocate and relocate. Can you imagine what it would be like to be told that you have to move out of your home, told to do it on short notice, don't have a vehicle, all of the luxuries that we enjoy. So you take your cart and your donkey and you load up and you and your family are off to look for a safe place to live, not necessarily a comfortable place. This has happened. This has happened to the Palestinians in Gaza. We've got to do something about this. And finally, my appeal to you don't see a Palestinian, please. See a human being. Think of the Israelis that were harmed. Realize that there are children in Gaza that have been harmed. Harmed is a very kind, polite word for all of these innocent victims. It's a very polite way to say that children have lost their lives. It's a very polite way to speak of the inhumanity that the Israelis suffered. It's a polite way to talk about decapitations. We are the United States of America. We hold within our hands the power to show the world that these kinds of circumstances can be addressed and that we plan to be a party to the effort to make right these injustices. Yes, injustices. Injustice in Israel, injustice in Gaza. Now, when it comes time for us to do what we can monetarily, there has to be aid for Gaza. There has to be aid for Palestinians. We cannot decide that our aid can only benefit some when we know that we have a duty to benefit others. This is our duty and our responsibility. We must do what we can to ensure that the persons in Gaza receive aid and comfort. They are innocent victims, and all innocent victims have to be accorded the opportunity to have a brighter future. I'm always fond of quoting Dr. King, and the quote that everybody knows is most applicable here. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. It may not happen today, but if we leave these injustices unchecked, if we don't do what we can to provide aid and comfort to Palestinians, the injustice that we see in these distant places can haunt us because our fingerprints are on the bombs that created these circumstances. I will go back to my district, and on Saturday, I will continue this. I will continue this process on Saturday because I have scheduled a meeting with constituents at the Fountain of Praise. Those of you from Houston and my district, you know of what I speak and the location that I speak of. 10 o'clock a.m. This is an indication of what I will talk about, but it's not a complete story of what I will reveal. So I ask persons who come, bring your video equipment. We'll do it live, and you can video it so that the world may see there is nothing to hide. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the time, and I believe that we can make the difference necessary to end the cycle of vengeance. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman